I'm really excited about this episode of Get Yourself Optimized because I was full immersion into using the device we're going to talk about. And I think it's going to be pretty interesting and potentially transformational for you, the listener. My two guests for this episode are Ratna Singh and Ulrich Dempfle. Dempfle. Is that how I pronounce it?
That's pretty good. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
So Ratna is the founder and CEO of CAR.O.L. She's a microbiologist, a McKinsey consultant, and an advertising guru with two kids. But she never had the time to exercise until she invented CAR.O.L. So jogging was an option, and so with this stationary bike called CAR.O.L with AI, she's transforming the fitness industry, and Dave Asprey loves this bike, and I had a personal conversation with him about it. This isn't just hype; he actually does endorse it privately, so that was pretty impressive. So Ratna invented CAR.O.L to solve the world's fourth deadliest problem, inactivity. Ulrich is also a founder and the chief product officer. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's an ex PricewaterhouseCoopers director leading machine learning and AI in the healthcare space. That's very impressive. He also ex McKinsey, senior engagement manager, and a mechanical engineer. Welcome, Ratna, and welcome, Ulrich.
Thank you for having us, Stefan. We're
Yeah,
delighted to
thank
be
you.
here.
So let's talk first of all about high intensity interval training, because not everybody who's listening knows what HIIT is and why that is helpful and maybe something that they should incorporate into their workout regime.
I'll take that one. So HIIT is something that's been around for a while, and it's gained a lot of press and popularity as being the more effective way to get to your fitness and health goals. So it's supposed to be based around intervals, and those intervals are extremely high intensity, and you intersperse those intervals with, less intensity. Basically, you recover, etc. The problem, however, has been that the scientists that research on high intensity training, and the results that are published on high intensity training, and what the consumer ends up doing are two different things. Simply because the kind of machinery or equipment that's required to execute true HIIT is until now has just not been available for Joe Blogs on the consumer side. And the difference between HIIT and true HIIT, I will explain, but I'll start by saying things like, for example, CrossFit, or even spinning classes, or Tabata, or an F45, other modalities that claim to be HIIT are at least 25-30 minutes long. And during that time, you are working for most of that time. And you're working hard for most of that time. And you're going to sweat. Now, that's because the intensity at which you work just isn't high enough, which is why you have to spend longer doing it. The true HIIT, which happens in seconds, and that's what the researchers have researched, is about the maximum load your body can handle. And that requires a specific computer-generated resistance that's tailored for you, that you work against. And if you've experienced CAR.O.L, you'll know that at the end of the 40 seconds, you simply cannot do any more. You won't need to, and you certainly wouldn't want to, because if you do true HIIT, 2 20-second sprints at absolute max intensity that leads you to absolute fatigue at the end of the sprint is all you need. So there's no need for extended HIIT training. Whenever you have something that's self-guided, like in a Tabata or whatever, it's good. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's, in our definition, still considered medium intensity training.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So what you're saying is if you are doing something like a spin class or whatever, you're doing an aerobic workout, but it's not technically HIIT because
It's
you're
not true HIIT.
yeah. So
Yeah.
you're not recovering enough with low intensity in order to make these true intervals.
No, you're just not at high enough intensity within, during the intervals.
Okay.
Uh, because if you were, then you just wouldn't need to, nor would you be able to do any more.
Okay. So you're not going
So,
hard out enough, and
yeah.
so if like, is there some before your bike? Was there some way to go hard out enough with some a program or some device, or is
Yeah, I mean, the as Ratna said, the research has been around literally for decades. So therefore, by definition, there must have been a way to do it. Yeah.
right?
So in the lab, scientists use kind of special types of bikes that can kind of execute. It's called a Wingate sprint. So where you have you can basically pedal really fast with very low resistance and then kind of apply a very precise resistance very quickly, and kind of only this kind of getting up to speed beforehand, then quick application of the right resistance that gets you to your maximum intensity levels. So kind of the execution of this process is quite important. And now they obviously had equipment and have equipment to do that. The problem is just this is basically a two-man operation, or has been a two-man operation so far. So you have a subject that has been recruited for a trial, and you have a lab technician standing next to the person and operating the bike. And then you can execute the exercise correctly, and you get kind of the results that have been published in so many peer-reviewed journals. And that's basically what we also came across. Kind of this amazing science, the amazing results, fantastic evidence, and then we tried to do it on, conventional equipment that a normal consumer could purchase. We were just fairly, we couldn't replicate it ourselves, and that's literally what triggered the development of CAR.O.L, was that we were we had this amazing science, but no way to do it without a lab technician by our side. So that's not really good. So we kind of set out to develop a consumer-friendly version of that to actually kind of bring the benefits of that fantastic science to a broad kind of the mass of consumers who otherwise wouldn't have an option to do it.
Yeah, and CAR.O.L becomes your lab technician, frankly. That's what she does. She generates the exact resistance. She measures your power. She measures the rate at which you're getting tired. And she executes the protocol. In other words, she moves the motors and all that stuff at the right time. Every second matters. And by measuring all the your performance and your heart rate, etc., she will then change the next resistance, so that if you are, for example, getting fitter, then she'll make it harder for you, because she'll try and train you to be as fit as you can possibly ever be. And as you know, Stefan, on our bike there are no knobs. You can't twist and adjust the resistance. CAR.O.L does all of that for you, and she can do it in decimal points. And so when she changes resistance, it's in tiny increments. Half the time you won't even notice it. Well, you will sometimes notice it, but the idea there is that we are very precise in the way we train you, and we train you to get to your maximum. And sorry, up until now, there has been nothing on the planet that would tell you that in 40 seconds of hard work, you will get fitter than any traditional exercise. 40 seconds. No spinning company can do that. No spin class can do that. No CrossFit class can do that. No Orange Theory class can do that. No Tabata class can do that. Nothing that people think is high intensity training can get you fitter than traditional exercise in just 40 seconds.
Yeah, and I've tried some different devices that give you fast results, but it wasn't for the cardio aspect. It was for like weightlifting, and the device that I'm thinking specifically of is the biodensity machine. Tony Robbins was a huge fan of this device. He had one in each of his homes, and I tried it, and it's interesting. It's like you hard out resist, or not resist. You actually work to your maximum with like a chest press and a leg press and so forth. There are 4 different exercises, and you do it for 20 seconds or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then you're done. It's like a 2-minute thing, and that's it. But it's a $25,000 piece of equipment. So
I know.
It's something you go to the gym or like the chiropractor or whatever who's invested in that device, and they don't have a whole lot of them around. I actually had Mark Jaquith, the inventor, on this podcast talking about the device. I ended up not buying one. I was seriously considering it, but I didn't buy one. Mm-hmm. But I'm curious what your thoughts are, like on the. So you handle the cardio side of it with the bike, but what about the like weightlifting or
Sure.
Like putting some stress on your muscles to build some muscle density and some muscle fiber?
Yeah. So I mean, there's certainly another really important aspect, and we're, for example, very close friends and good friends and work very closely with the folks at ARX, and we love their machines for strength training. And in fact, many of our commercial customers, like gyms and biohacking facilities, actually have kind of the ARX machines, for muscle and bone density, and have then CAR.O.L bikes for cardio. And the philosophy is very similar. It's kind of providing kind of maximum load and kind of a really intense, like the maximum intensity stimulus to trigger a biological response. Now, what we're basically doing is based on rapid glycogen depletion. So that's what we're mastering. We manage to, burn through so much sugar in your biggest sugar stores, your quads and your glutes, and that triggers, and this is kind of well understood, triggers a kind of an adaptive response that strengthens your cardiovascular health. Mm-hmm. And the key to that is really the rapid glycogen depletion. And you can deplete glycogen with a number of different forms of exercise, but CAR.O.L is the one that achieves the most rapid form of glycogen depletion, and therefore gets, for your cardiovascular fitness and for your cardiovascular health, the best results, and is therefore kind of a perfect augmentation to kind of other smart exercises that help you with your bone density, that help you with muscle mass. So I think you'll find kind of and all of those hacks, work actually beautifully together and help you then to get a quite comprehensive set of physiological benefits in minimum time. Yeah. And we have some customers who love their resistance work, but they recognize, I also have to do something for my cardio, and they get it out of the way quickly and can spend more time with their resistance training. Others want to have everything out of the way as quickly as possible and then use kind of like a CAR.O.L ARX combo that just basically you don't need more than half an hour a week.
And to add to that, I would basically say that we absolutely say that if you want to sort of build your upper body, or if you want to do, stretching and stuff like that, you do need to do, resistance training. You also need to do yoga, for example. So we love yoga, and we think that, that's a perfect complement to CAR.O.L, as is a machine like ARX. But, and this is the strange thing, is that our scientists have told us that, the stimulus that you get is so potent that some of the adaptations that you get, they don't even know how that happens. And I'll give you an example. A lady called Skye Cowan, she is an independent vlogger. And she does a lot of HIIT training. She does a lot of, yoga and all kinds, like every day she's doing something. And she loves all of that. And she heard about CAR.O.L and she thought, I'm going to stop everything and I'm going to see if I can put this AI machine to the test for 30 days and see what results I'm going to get. So she had her body scan. She did her fat percentage calculation and her muscle. She was already quite lean. I think she was at 16% fat or something, which is lean. And she just did CAR.O.L 3 times a week. At the end of 30 days, she measured herself again and she had lost more fat. So she was at 13% fat and she had gained muscle. And that was the weird thing, that she actually gained muscle, even though she did no strength training. It could be that she gained a lot in her, thighs, her calves and her glutes. And something in your triceps, because when you're holding on for 10 minutes, it actually tones it. But it is, I would say, do some more. But as I say, also that, we don't target people who want to be bulky. We just target people like me, like Ulrich, who've got families, who've got no time to, and no interest in long exercise. They just want to get it over and done with as quickly as possible so that they're healthy and they are around for a long time in a healthy way. It's the smart way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so the 20 seconds, they're 2 20-second sprints, but you surround that with 3 minutes of warm-up, then you got 3 minutes of recovery, and then a 3-minute cool down. So all in, we're talking about a 10-minute session.
Yeah.
So
Go on.
It's not like a 40-second exercise and then you're done. You do have to do the low intensity stuff too to complete the exercise.
Absolutely, you do. And each segment has its purpose. So obviously, the 2-minute warm-up is a 2-minute warm-up for obvious reasons. The recovery in between the 2 sprints are also necessary because you need to have a good second sprint, right? So you need to just recover, get your breath back, just do a bit of refueling if you can. And then the last 3 minutes, the cool down is more really to build your blood pressure back up again so that when you get off the bike, you're not feeling dizzy or nauseous. So they have a purpose, but the actual work is only 40 seconds. Yeah. I mean, real work. The other thing is so it's like you're walking, you're producing no more than 12 watts, tiny,
Exactly. It's not enough to break out a sweat.
That's right.
Which is interesting. Like you have this video of a guy in a full suit on your website, which is kind of bizarre to me to see that, but I'm like, I kind of get the point of it, but it took a while to figure out like, oh, okay, so you're trying to point out that you don't break a sweat. It just seemed weird to me, but anyways, so the idea though of not breaking a sweat, why is that important?
Because it's all about time. It's really about the income. So we found that the biggest barriers to exercise, people say that don't have enough time. It's inconvenient and I have to, go to a destination. I've got to change. I've got to shower. All of that takes time. Don't want to do it. This is 8 minutes, 40 seconds all in. You don't need to change. You don't need to shower. You just go, get your exercise done and you will feel it. I've just come back from a show in Miami. And the number of people who came back the next day to say, I'm still feeling it. And I said, yeah, you will. You will be feeling it. It's quite remarkable. So, it's really about time. If you had to shower and sweat, then we're not that differentiated anymore. We're getting, closer to the other types of offerings that are there. But in our mind, we need to break down the barriers to exercise. And the best way to do that is by having something that is the minimum time investment, but maximum effectiveness. And this is the funny thing, Stefan. It's more effective. CAR.O.L is more effective than 30 minutes of jogging every day.
So why is that? Let's really debunk some myths out there and let our listener know the science behind this.
It is more effective because it's a very potent stimulus. Now, think about us as human beings who've evolved over time, right? Our lifestyles have evolved a lot faster than our bodies have, yeah? We still have that survival mechanism. We still have that flight or fright response. And what we simulate with CAR.O.L is the way your body should exercise right? Just think about it. If you're a caveman and you're out in the savannah, if you jogged all day long, you know, you wouldn't have the energy to run away from the tiger. So what did caveman do? He walked and he looked for food, or he ran for his life. And that's what we simulate. You walk during the slow periods, warm up, cool down, your recovery, and then you run for your life away from the tiger for 40 seconds, right? 2 20-second sprints. So the science, the way it works is that your body gets a massive shock suddenly when you do the kind of exercise that we do. And we'll, as Ulrich said, you have rapid glycogen depletion. You reach your peak power within the first 5 to 10 seconds of the first sprint. And then you reach that power for a fraction of a second. Literally, it's impossible to continue to hold that. Nobody can do it. Not even, rugby players from the All Blacks. It's just impossible. And then you start to lose your power when your glycogen is depleting. Clearly, your energy stores are depleting rapidly. By the end of 20 seconds, it's for you enough, done. Now your body sees that and says, "Oh my God, Stefan is on empty." Suddenly, Stefan needs, 900 watts of power. He needs so much more oxygen. He needs so much more energy. And because as humans, we are, highly adaptive, your body changes. You adapt. And you adapt to become the person that it thinks you want to be, or the needs you have. I mean, it's unlikely that you will be producing high wattage now. And we see this all the time in shows. People come and say, "Yeah, I do a lot of exercise. Yeah, I do a lot of cycling." And then they come on, the power is not that high, and their power per heartbeat is certainly not as high as some of our riders who would never say they're particularly athletic, So I think that's how it works. It works because it puts your body under threat, and your evolutionary mechanism kicks in to make sure that you as a species survive. And the demands you put on your system are so high that your body has to adapt to give you what it thinks you're asking it for. See what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. Now you've got multiple choices with the you have a few different options. Besides the 2 20-second sprints, you could do 2 10-second sprints instead, or you could do a fat burner mode of 30 sprints in the 10 minutes. What are the differences, and why would you want to do one or over the other?
Okay, so the anchor protocol is what we call it, the intense ride, the 2 times 20-second sprint. That's basically what we've been talking about so far. It's got fantastic evidence in terms of improving your cardiovascular fitness, your cardiorespiratory health. So there are a lot of health markers, and also helping with weight management, although through different mechanisms. Yeah. So when people think about weight management and do exercise, they generally think they want to burn a lot of calories kind of while they do the exercise. And that's actually not how kind of you get the benefit from the 2 20-second sprints. There's more. So first, your basically your metabolic rate changes, and you have a much higher. It's called EPOC. It's excess post-exercise oxygen consumption. So you burn calories longer for after the ride, and your insulin sensitivity improves a lot, which is incredibly helpful to lose weight if that's your goal. And if you're insulin resistant, it becomes incredibly difficult. I mean, it's almost impossible to lose weight then. So that's the 2 20-seconds. Then the 10-second one, that's basically just it's an energizer for people who want to do something every day. Now, you don't have to do it every day. The evidence, kind of most of the scientific studies were done with 3 times a week. The latest research indicates that actually 2 times a week might be enough. And certainly once you kind of like you've reached your target, your potential, like a maintenance dose can also be less rides per week. So those shorter sprints is for people who just want to use it every day. And then the fat burn. Now that's something that you do sweat and you do burn a lot of calories. So that's you do a lot more work on the bike So it's either 30 or 60 kind of cycles of 8 seconds sprint, 12 seconds recovery. And so that is, so first, I mean, very intense. You do, you're sweat drenched. You do actually burn a lot of calories on the bike. And it's been proven, again, there's good kind of scientific research to have kind of a very direct and much more potent effect on your fat stores. So there have been studies to show that this is 9 times more effective to lose fat than moderate intensity exercise. But it's a different thing. It
is a different thing. But I just want to say that, as Ulrich said, that our lead protocol is the 20-second stuff, and that's the one that CAR.O.L is always changing depending on your changing fitness levels. And it's important to say that the resistance can come down if you're struggling. If it's too much, you'll bring it down. If you just went like that in your fatigue curve. And the fat burn is linked to that. So let's say you've done 10, of our core exercise, and then you choose fat burn. It'll look to see what the resistance is, and it'll discount it by 40%, because at full on 8 seconds, 30 times, this would just be way too much for you. The endorphin boost on that one is massive. Why did we do it? To give people variety, to give people the option that they can use something else if they want to. Not very many people do. Pretty much, I'd say 90% of people stick to the 10-minute, the 9 minutes, the lead protocol, because it's very effective. And then when you ask them, well, why didn't you use the fat burn? Oh, it's another 5 minutes. Every minute counts. This is how much people want their time.
Right.
They won't add an extra 5. Yeah.
But what if your outcome that you're after is to go from, let's say, 22% body fat percentage to 12%?
Yeah, you should just do, we have different packages for people. So we just say, look, if you want to burn fat rapidly, do this. If you want to burn fat slowly, do this. If you want to get really fit, do this type thing. So I would suggest, if they want to lose fat very quickly, I would say 1 fat burn a week and 2 intense, and that should be great.
Okay. So the fat burn mode, is that going to just like wreck you? Like, as far as like feeling like, oh my God, I need to, I can't do anything the rest of the day.
No, it wouldn't do that, but it does wipe you out at the end. And the endorphins, however, are really popping. And we've got customers who do, because they're so pumped up by the end of it, that they do an intense as well. They do back-to-backs, which they don't need to, but they just want to. And next day you recover fine.
So how does this differ for somebody who would be deemed a sugar burner versus a fat burner?
Well, so what do you mean exactly? So
if you, depending on how you eat and what you eat, and maybe your genetics as well, you tend to burn sugar more than you burn fat. And if you burn sugar, then you don't lose weight. It's really hard to lose weight. But whereas if, that's a big reason to go keto, for example, is that you'll burn fat more than you'll burn sugar.
Yeah. And why does keto work? Because it drops your insulin levels, right? When you've got high levels of insulin floating about, you are absolutely not going to burn fat for energy, because insulin is a sugar transporter and a fat blocker, right? So when you do what we do, you drop your levels of insulin significantly. And the way it works is this: the thigh muscles, remember, from an evolutionary perspective, the sugar is burnt either locally or it's sucked back in from your blood and stored for burning again in case there's a tiger chasing you. It doesn't actually come out of your thighs into your bloodstream unless conditions are extreme. So when you rapidly deplete your glycogen, the body panics and sucks up sugar from your blood and restocks it into your thighs. And that's an insulin-dependent process. And, once the sugar's gone, the insulin's gone. And so if you now need to, burn sugar for energy and you don't have any floating around, what's going to happen? You're going to burn fat for energy. And that turns into sugar. So I don't know if that answers your question, does it?
Maybe let's bring in the piece about glycogen and how important it is to do the rapid glycogen depletion. Like how does that fit into this equation?
The rapid glycogen depletion has to happen in order for you to be at absolute fatigue, in order to then trigger this panic reaction in your body, and in order for you to refuel rapidly and for your insulin levels to go down. That's the vital thing. If you were to do it slowly, you can burn your glycogen slowly, but it'll just take you longer. The effect will eventually be the same. It just takes you, an hour, 60 minutes, 25 minutes. So the rapid glycogen depletion will cause total fatigue in 20 seconds. If you didn't do rapid glycogen depletion, you would have fatigue in an hour.
And it's also kind of literally the molecular response that's a different one. So as you burn, kind of having this rapid glycogen depletion, first, you can't use your preferred stores or sources of sugar or fuel. Usually in a steady state, moderate intensity exercise, you would take the sugar or like the fuel you burn from the bloodstream. Mm-hmm. If you operate at maximum intensity, you can't quickly enough absorb the sugar from the bloodstream. Therefore, you have to burn what's stored locally. That's one thing. The other thing is because it's at that high intensity level, it's an anaerobic exercise, and you have to basically convert a lot more glycogen than you would in an aerobic exercise. And now kind of burning the local stores, sorry, I'm pointing towards my thighs, burning the local stores so quickly basically triggers kind of the release of signaling molecules that otherwise just don't get released and activated. So kind of I have to say that I'm the mechanical engineer in our team and kind of the data scientist, Ratna is the microbiologist. But you create in that ATP cycle in which your mitochondria create the energy for the muscle to basically function. First AMPK as a product of the cycle, and then release that gets activated to release a what's referred to as a master switch, PGC1 alpha, that just signals to your body that its current level of fitness and strength and function is not sufficient for the threats and the demands that are placed on it, and therefore kind of just triggers a completely different response and a different response mechanism than normal exercise would do. Now there's different pathways basically how your body can adapt, but this is the pathway how you get this minimum effective dose kind of so quickly. If you go for a run for an hour, it's a different pathway. Mm-hmm. But what helps you here is basically the release of certain signaling molecules that just trigger a different biological and adaptive response of your body.
And for that purpose, like if you look at the ACE study, they show that the blood sugar drops quite a bit. Your cholesterol levels drop quite a bit. So I think in order for people, even if you are, as you say, a sugar burner and not so much of a fat burner, if you clear the sugar from your bloodstream, which is what keto does, you could think of us as a keto bike. That's what effectively we do. We take the sugar away from your bloodstream, stick it back into your thighs, and so you have to burn fat for energy.
And why 40 seconds and not like 60 seconds?
So that's an empirically tested result. So as we said earlier, the Wingate sprint, the Wingate protocol has been around for quite a while. So the Wingate Institute was founded in 1975 in Israel. Yeah. And they established the principle kind of maximum intensity sprint intervals, and figured out that it's very effective. Published a few papers, different research groups, sports science centers in the world kind of picked it up and kind of basically try to do two things. One, understand why it's so effective, And that's, and I'm obviously quoting our scientific advisors, kind of explaining the biological, and molecular response. And the other thing they did was just try to titrate it down to the minimum effective dose. So how much do you really have to do to trigger all those biological changes? And they tested that. So with ultrasound, you can monitor the level of glycogen depletion you achieve. Through biopsies, you can measure kind of like the molecular changes that occur. And so they've just tested kind of what happens. So that, I guess it's a normal thing to do. You first start with something that works really well, and you do a bit too much of it. So you use 30-second sprints or 40-second sprints. You use 4, 5, 6 sprints because you think it helps a lot. And then you try to dial it back and see what's the minimum we can get away with, both kind of tracking the molecular changes and kind of measuring the results over a period with, and then kind of randomized controlled groups of subjects and so on. And that has been answered. So 2 times 20 seconds is the minimum effective dose. If you do 10-second sprints, well, then that doesn't happen. Like these signaling molecules don't get released and activated. And if you look at a group who did that for 6 weeks, they don't get the benefits. 20 seconds, 2 20-second sprints, yes, tick, that does it. 30 seconds, it also does it. Yeah, it works. But it's like a whole lot harder on your body and feels so. If you try to operate at maximum intensity levels, 20 seconds is pretty long.
Yeah, it's interminable. Like the difference between a 10-second sprint and a 20-second sprint
absolutely.
is
You've
significant.
Done it, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I've got the bike. I did it this morning.
Yeah, there you go.
And if you did that in 30 seconds or 40 seconds, it's just like it would feel a ton harder, and it would be a lot rougher on your body for no additional gain.
No.
And so that's what CAR.O.L really is. It's the minimum effective dose of the most effective form of cardio exercise in a really consumer-friendly, fully automated package that helps you get it right every time. Oh. And you don't have to think about it terribly much. You get on it, and CAR.O.L will coach you through the session. And you do have those 2 20-second sprints. You have to go all out in the warm up and the recovery. You can go very, very soft. You just do some mindfulness, some breathing, and then you just go all out on those 2 20 seconds. And then, hey, that's when the magic happens, and you get like fantastic results.
And Stefan, if I could add to that, normally, like we talked about true HIIT being the prerogative of laboratories, and they were all subjects were, young men, students a lot of the time. And yeah, they finished doing the 30-second sprints. But the reason true HIIT didn't make it into the mainstream was also because it was just way too hard for normal people to do it. I mean, you said you've done the rides, of course you do. And, at the end of 20 seconds, boy, if you were to do another 10, you'd be like, no, thank you. It'll put you off the ride. And so as Ulrich said, we know that in the first 10 seconds of the first sprint, you deplete your glycogen. You rapidly trigger it. In the second 10 seconds of the first sprint, you release AMPK. And in the second sprint, you activate the signaling molecules, and the main one being PGC1 alpha, and that's the master switch. And in any subsequent sprints, nothing else happens. So as he was saying, this is the pathway that needs to get activated to create the different changes. They get all completed in 2 20-second sprints. So there's really no need to do any more.
Right. What's the importance of the mindfulness breathing in between the 2 sprints? I mean, how important is that?
Yeah, we put that in because, we've got people. We thought at first that this is going to go into companies, corporates, and, people who are sitting around for hours at a time, and they're probably stressed. We've worked and we've been stressed. So when you come on CAR.O.L, we wanted it to be a mind and body workout. And so, everybody talks about mindfulness, but it's difficult to just sit and breathe. Now, when we've got you a captive audience on the bike, perhaps we have a visual way to show how the breathing can work in a mindful way. And if you practice doing it on the bike, you might be able to continue practicing it at your desk or in your home or when you're walking. So it's really our attempt to help people do mindfulness breathing in an easier way. And for them to also switch off, the exercise is hard enough and your brain will switch off, but the mindfulness is also attempting to do that. There'll be a Kundalini breath coming soon. It's the victory breath. Amazing. Okay. I've tortured my children with it. And I'm going to torture my riders.
So for those of us who don't know what Kundalini breathing is, I've tried Kundalini yoga. In fact, I want to have... Guru Singh on the podcast talking about it. He said he'd be on the show, so stay tuned, listeners. We'll hopefully have him on. So give us a quick explanation of Kundalini breathing.
Well, there's many different types of, breathing, right? The one I like is because I find that it really changes the brain chemistry for me, and it changes. I did it to my children just before exams. I had them in the car, and 5 minutes before they were about to go into exams, like, come on, we're going to do this now. And it really helped calm people down. It's very simple. You take a deep breath in, and then you hold it, and you count victory. It's literally 3 words. 3 seconds, victory, release. And then you do that, several times. And as you will find out from Guru Singh, when you do Kundalini yoga, you almost always have to start by a prayer to the Guru, Sadguru, to the Guru. And there's a special prayer before you do anything in Kundalini. This is the only one where you don't need a special prayer. So you can do it on the fly, you can do it on the bike, you can do it in the back of a car. And it's something that I hope, we'll test it. People don't have to like it and don't have to use it if they don't like it. But if they do, great. It's another way for them to help their body.
Okay, so actually let's try it right now. Okay. So let's get the listener to do this with us. Okay, we're going to do deep breath. Okay, here we go.
Deep breath. Hold it. Count in your head, say victory, and then slowly exhale. Slowly.
Okay, maybe that wasn't so slow. I'll do better next time.
Try it again.
Okay.
Well, try again. Victory.
Very good.
Okay.
See, my mind's feeling. Woo.
That is good.
It's good.
Yep. And so you do 3 of these.
No, you can do 5 minutes of it. So
okay.
They've got 3. We've got them, for 3 minute slots, and we just activate it.
That's awesome. My wife Orion, she learned at Nam Yoga this breathing exercise, and I teach it to a lot of people because it's just so invigorating. You breathe in, and you hold it, and then you start tapping on your chest with your fingers. And you keep holding. Oh, and you also. Sorry, I messed it up. Okay, so you got to breathe in, and then you breathe in a little more, and then a little more. You keep holding it, and then you tap on your chest with both hands, with the fingers, and then let it go. And you do that, let's say, twice, and it just feels so invigorating. Sometimes, if I'm giving a speech after lunch and people seem kind of sleepy, I'll get them to stand up and do this, and they'll think, "What the heck? This is I'm in the room for an SEO talk, and I'm getting a breathing exercise. This is so weird." But then they feel so much better. I get them to raise their hands, like, who feels more awake, more alert, more invigorated? Everybody raises their hand. It's just so awesome.
I felt good after doing that. And, this is stuff that we can do when we've got people on the bike. We can play with different breathing techniques.
Yeah, that's super cool. So one more question about the bike and how that relates to biology and biochemistry and all that. And actually specifically genetics. Like how does your gene makeup kind of fit into this? Because I had Kurt Johnson on the podcast a while back, founder of Simplified Genetics, and the whole premise of that is you get a genetics test from his company, which I did get, and it tells you the percentage of low intensity workout versus high intensity workout you should do, and also the percentage of macronutrients that you should intake based on your genes. And it doesn't like go into all this detail. It's a very simple report that you get back. Like these are your percentages, and then if you want to know the science behind it, then there are lots of research that you can read up on. But it's very simple, very easy to wrap your head around, and it's very practical. So I'm curious what your take is on that.
Yeah, sure. We'll give you our take, but just curious. I'm curious. Did you find that this was it was accurate? Did you find that it resonated?
I didn't actually apply it for long enough that I got any noticeable difference, and I'm kind of embarrassed to admit that. I should really go back and review the report and really give it a good try this time, because there's good science behind it, and I believe it.
Right.
I have a master's in biochemistry, so
wow.
It made sense to me when he explained it. But then it's like you get busy with life, and you're not like it's hard to install new habits. For those of you listening who have trouble installing new habits, definitely listen to the BJ Fogg episode. He's like the world expert on habit formation. So
let's answer your question.
Yeah.
So yes, you're right. And there's 20% of the population that's considered low to non-responders to anything that to do relative to improving their aerobic health. 60% are good to moderate responders, or moderate to good, and 20% are super responders, and they are the elite athletes, right? So whatever they do, they just get an amplified, effect based on the work that they're doing. I, ironically, am a non-responder. I've had my genetics tested. And Ulrich is a moderate to good, and he can talk about his story in a minute, because it's very interesting. But we will start to pick this up, though. You see, remember, we're tracking your performance, we're tracking your power per heartbeat, which effectively is how fit you are, and that is an important score that we give everybody, because it shows, not only how fit are they at baseline, but how they're improving over time. And we can see, for me, for example, my power per heartbeat or octane score is not that high, and it doesn't increase that much. And after about 8 to 12 weeks of regular use, CAR.O.L will be able to start to guess whether you are a lower responder, a moderate, or a super responder. And we have super responders, definitely. We have about 6 or 7 of them. We have, most people are, moderate, good responders, and a few of us are bad responders. So we will pick that up, and we'll use that information so that people can set their expectations, because I don't want them getting, depressed that it's not improving as much as they should. And just to also let them know that, this is kind of it for them, But there is, as you know, because you've got a master's in biochemistry, the wonderful thing called epigenetics. So we're not slaves to our genes entirely. I mean, 23% of our response is from our genetics, and the rest, it comes from elsewhere. And Ulrich can say that even though he tested low, he's managed to outperform his genes.
So moderate. I did the genetic testing, and was identified as a kind of low to moderate responder. I did the VO2 Max testing, and I see the results on CAR.O.L. Now, we have CAR.O.L, so that's another reason why it's not just 20-second sprints. So we kind of measure your heart rate and your heart rate recovery in these resting periods, in the cool down and recovery period. That makes CAR.O.L pretty much a controlled experiment every time you use it. So it's something that gets you fit, actually fitter than anything else, but it's also a controlled fitness test each time you do it. And we see pretty much the same results over a cohort that scientists predict in their research. And this, so that's quite. That's comforting. That's we're very happy to see that. I mean, kind of when we did the first tests, it was amazing that we could replicate
But you've outperformed your genes.
And that's the thing. So I was predicted to benefit something like 12 to 15%. And sure enough, that's what I got after something like 8 to 10 weeks. But then it continued. And I saw another like 12% improvement over the next 10 weeks. And got all the way, I mean, since I've done CAR.O.L, my cardiovascular fitness, so measured in our octane score, which really tracks very precisely VO2 max, improved by almost 50%, which is
amazing.
A phenomenal amount, and which would have not been predicted by the genetic test alone. Now, I did, like CAR.O.L basically opened a journey for me to do all sorts of other things as well, like cold therapy and kind of looking at my sleep, intermittent fasting, and kind of a whole range of things that you're probably practicing, and that, it opened a whole new door to me. And just it helped me beat my genes, I guess, and better them, awesome. And get better results than would have been predicted.
Not me. I haven't beaten my genes, but then I haven't done everything that he's done. I'll just do CAR.O.L and that's it, and I'm happy with that.
Yeah, for me it was like an entry drug, I guess.
It's crazy.
That's awesome. And so the VO2 max, for those of you listening who are not familiar with that terminology, could you guys explain that?
Sure. That's your maximum capacity to metabolize oxygen. Full stop. So how much oxygen can you burn? And you would measure it usually kind of with a breathing apparatus and kind of like slowly increasing. But you use a protocol where you kind of increase the intensity kind of step by step until you really poop out. We actually, so a number of universities use our bike for exactly that test. They have, or even kind of like a number of gyms do that. So we have a special protocols for our commercial customers in there. So you can also use CAR.O.L for VO2 max testing with a breathing apparatus, with a breathing analyzer. For new normal consumers, because we have the octane score that basically measures your power per heartbeat and kind of does this experiment, how quickly does your heart rate recover. The way we've designed that is kind of so that it tracks VO2 max. So it is something really quite different, because CAR.O.L is an anaerobic exercise and we take you basically to your anaerobic limits. But through tracking that, we can make kind of a statement about how much your aerobic fitness has improved. And that's not just us talking. So there's first the research is there, but then we have been completely independently assessed and validated in a randomized controlled trial by Western University in Colorado. Results were published in a peer-reviewed journal. The whole study was funded by the American Council on Exercise, which is like the biggest nonprofit in that arena. And they've confirmed that the results we're seeing in terms of VO2 max improvement are in fact. So they had, and we can probably link to the paper in the show notes or so. Also in that cohort, 12.6% improvement over 8 weeks of using CAR.O.L, which happened to be twice as much as a control group that did. They spent 5 times as much time on moderate intensity exercise. So they went jogging, so we doubled the results in 20% of the time. And that's not just in fitness, but kind of all the other health markers that they've tracked around insulin sensitivities, kind of like metabolic risk and so on.
And VO2 max is a very strong predictor of your future health. If you have a low VO2 max, it means that you're likely to get other, the common diseases associated with aging, diabetes, heart disease, etc. So it is important to have a high VO2 max, and it just means that your risk levels drop significantly.
Right, so I had Tom Butler on the podcast a while back, and he's from VO2, which is an oxygen training system. Are you guys familiar with that?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So is their approach and their technology of super oxygenation, is that compatible with this, or do you just need one or the other, or is yours, in your view, superior to theirs? Like, where does this fit?
So we've looked into whether we should be combining, oxygen with the exercise, and we haven't quite tested it yet. Now we work with two very good scientists. One of them basically says that no, if you use oxygen during CAR.O.L exercise, you're going to produce too many free radicals, and that's not good for you. The other one says that it would actually enhance the production of waste factors in the body, which means that the adaptations would be greater. So there's two very different opinions, and we just have not decided which one is correct yet. And the reason we haven't done it is because until we test it on CAR.O.L, we're not going to use it. So that's going to be the next study that will be done to see whether oxygen helps or hinders. Obviously, we're not using it right now because we don't want to introduce free radicals, just in case that's true. But I don't know. But I mean, and I think what Live O2 people do is obviously fantastic. I just don't know if together it's good or bad yet.
Right. Yeah. When I tried the device, I'm cycling on this bike. I got the mask on, and then they reduce the oxygen level, increase the nitrogen level, so that your cells get depleted of oxygen and are starving, and then super oxygenate after that. And then what they say is that cells that are not even used to getting much oxygen are just super oxygenated and kind of reinvigorated. So it's pretty interesting. The person who gave me the demo of this was at the Bulletproof biohacking conference. The lady who worked for Live O2, and this is all in the episode, listeners, she had a horrible car accident, and she was like not going to be able to walk again or anything. And one of the kind of last ditch efforts she tried to get back to health was the Live O2 device, and it turned her life around. Now she's just back to normal, and so she was just so grateful and happy and everything that she decided to help the Live O2 company, and now she works for them and gives demos and stuff. That was pretty convincing to hear her story while I'm trying out the device in the tech hall at the Bulletproof conference. But I was just curious if that is compatible, because it sounds like it might be.
I think you're right, but let's just test it. We need to test it.
Yeah. So we do want to be in everything we do kind of clearly science-based and fact-based, and so it'll be a case of working with our scientific advisors and getting the tests done before we push it out. I mean, obviously we push the envelope and we're cutting edge, but we are short, smart, scientific. That's we're also that. Yes.
Yeah, makes sense. Last question here, because I know we're out of time. What is the optimal heart rate to aim for? Because I know that there's a heart rate of something like 180 minus your age or something like that is like a target heart rate.
Yeah.
Is that applicable to when you're on the CAR.O.L bike? Or is it, you just don't worry about that as long as you're not like to some super high number that is kind of scary?
No, we do use that formula for setting your target heart rate ranges, but we don't say that there is a target heart rate. What we do want is for you to go to 90% or higher of your max heart rate. I usually go to 104, 5%. That's fine, but you got to recover fast. If you don't recover, that's when there's a problem, and the right will automatically abort. So there's that safety algorithm in our system. So we basically say do as best as you can, and if you have hit 90% plus of your max heart rate, you've certainly worked hard, and you've recovered quickly as well. So that's fantastic. Everything's working for you. But we don't say hit 180 or hit 200. Nah, don't do that.
Got it. All right. Well, this was fabulous. I'm super happy to have this device in my home. And so if folks wanted to buy the device, try out the device, what are their next steps? Like how do they try out the device if they're maybe not in a major city that has these devices in the local gym or whatever? And then how do they get the device if they want to buy it for their home?
So we are growing. So we're not in every single city at the moment. But if you go on our website, there is a map, and you can explore where CAR.O.L bike exists on the map. And if it's close to you, it's very easy. It's usually commercial locations that have a bike, and they're very generous, and they allow people to come in and try it and see what they think. So that's one way of seeing where your nearest one is in order to try it. In order to buy it, just go on the website, just buy the bike. We have a 0% interest payment plan. So we're making it affordable for everybody. You can get it as low as $100 a month.
And is there a special discounted price for our listeners?
Of course, yes. And so we will give you $150 off by using a special code, which we can it probably will be Stefan 150, your first name 150, and we can publish that on your podcast footnotes.
We'll include that on the show notes as well as. So Stefan 150, perfect. So
exactly.
Thank you so much. This was great, and we'll put the research and stuff that you had mentioned that we can include in the show notes as well. So that'll all be at getyourselfoptimized.com. Thank you so much. Thank you, listeners. This is Stefan Spencer, your host, signing off.